You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.
Yo.
What's up, man?
How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, Chris. I'm good. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bmea podcast, Lifting Our Voices. I am your host, Michael Payne, and my man right here, Chris Waston. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Happy to be here. Another 2 weeks, man. Went by pretty fast, actually. You know, I won't say another week, but it's actually 2 weeks since we were last on here, so it went by fast. Doing all right. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. You know, it was a little brighter today. The days get a little bit longer, so I'm happier. You know, our co-hosts Jerry and Brandon, they're on vacation out of state, so you know, they're sending their love. We're gonna hold it down tonight. We got a good show ahead of us, though, man. I'm excited, really excited.
Yeah, I think it's a good topic, man. Talking about teacher compensation, number one. But on that topic of the sun, it's so funny. You know, like you said, we get more hours of sunlight. So every time we leave the house now, CJ, it's like, oh, it's a nice day out, and I'm like, don't let the sunshine fool you. You think he don't have to wear a coat outside, and he's just going crazy.
No, still cold. And I went to Los Angeles for my birthday, so that adjustment coming back to this weather was a little bit but I brought the sunshine with me, so I'm cool with that. Yeah, man. So we always start off with what's new with Bmea. You know, we still got the early career teacher fellowship going on, so shouts out to all our fellows in our second cohort.
Yes, sir.
On fifth session. I'll see them again on March 12th. And something new coming up is that we are offering professional development for schools. So if you are listening, you're a teacher, you're an administrator, you're a parent, you want to advocate for us, please reach out to us. You can contact Brandon at bmeaofmichigan.org. He's over all our programming, and we can get you squared away with have us come into your school.
That's excellent. I think it's about time. I know people have been asking, and we've been doing some work in schools and getting some great feedback, great results. Yeah. So, definitely if you're an educator, or you said administrator, even a parent, you want this in your child's school, have them reach out, and we can definitely get that going. And I'm excited to see, the great work in the schools continue.
Absolutely. And, we're going to be at the Michigan Reading Association conference in 2 weeks, live show.
Yes, sir. We need like the applause effect for that. That's gonna be major.
Yeah. So after this, we'll be pubbing that for the next couple of weeks, man, so people can catch that live. We got some big heavy hitters that we'll reveal very shortly, but it's gonna be a great show. But focusing on tonight, man, who's our first guest?
Our first guest. Now, Mike, you didn't know this. I think it's a pleasure and an honor to welcome to the show. Co-host gonna be with us for the first half of the show. Someone that I basically grew up with, went to elementary and middle school with, and I've known, most of my life. And he's in education and he's doing his thing. So I'm going to bring on Marcus Hester, one of our ETTF alums, also Detroit educator. He's going to tell you about himself. But let's bring him to the show.
Yes, sir.
Marcus.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you all doing?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's Thursday, Friday Eve, so it's, how it is at the end of the week.
Yeah, we always keep this podcast right into the weekend. Yeah. So we always have our guests come on and just talk a little bit about how they got into education, especially as a brother. So if you can just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and then how you got to teaching.
Okay. Lifelong Detroiter. Went to Base Academy with Chris, like he said. I think Chris came in second grade. It's funny, Chris, I remember when you came in Ms. Lashcraft's class. I remember that.
Hey, why ain't you help me out, man? I was struggling, dude.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you came to get the tour, and I remember you came to school and everything. I remember that like it was a few days ago. But we had some pretty great teachers there. Never had a real bad experience with teachers. I also grew up around educators. My mom was an educator. Other people in my family were in education in different aspects of it. So, I seen every angle of it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And, as time went on, I started learning history. And I was like, man, this would not be a bad profession to do. Graduated high school, And, 2007, education was going through what it was going through. People were being laid off and, schools closing and everything else. So I was like, I don't know about this, went away to school, and I was majoring in something I did not have any interest in. But that love for education never left. So came back, went to Wayne State, and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna dive in, and whatever happens. I'll figure it out from there. Went to Wayne State, got into social studies, and I took off from there. It's been an awesome journey since then, especially teaching a subject that I love. I'm in social studies, and as I learn about history and everything, I felt like it would be perfect for our kids to learn, a lot of what we didn't get in school, just to spread that knowledge.
Dope, man. Really dope.
Yeah.
So, as our guest host, man, we're going to go through some of our hot topics, what's going on in the world, and then also, the focus of today, which is the teacher compensation. But Chris, you want to go ahead and kick it off? What's our first topic for today?
Yeah. So the first thing I think that most of us are well aware is just the war over in Ukraine. Russia invading Ukraine about a week ago now. There's been thousands of deaths, as we know, a lot of destruction, as well as over 1 million people have now fled the country. So, Marcus, you being a historical, and I was actually minoring in history too, but, you've been a historical buff here. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that conflict and just the history of that region, and what do you see happening? Of course, we want to send our prayers out there to those people, being attacked, having to uproot their families, and we pray for that. The peace will come soon. But I'm just curious from a historical perspective, Marcus, like, what's your thoughts on it and where you see this headed?
So that is actually all I've been teaching and researching, all week since we've been back in school from break. So, I honestly, it's hard to say I'm really surprised what's going on. If you look back, Russia has always seemed to be a thorn in the world side. Just I don't know. It's weird. It's like this whole rivalry between Russia and the U.S. Just trying to have this level of world domination, and for Russia to basically conquer 14 other countries, for as long as they did, and for that to fall apart less than 30 years ago. We were all alive and well when that was going on. When the fall of Russia happened. So to see them come back and trying to take power is not really surprising, but it is unfortunate, because with the Ukraine being a sovereign nation and just living their life, and all of a sudden you look up and this big guy to the right of you is sliding in, trying to take over, trying to make their way be what it is it's tough to watch. And I teach at Cass Tech, so majority Black school, but very diverse. So I get to listen to not only Black kids' perspective of it, but Bengali kids, Hispanic kids, white kids, and everything else. And just hearing them talk about it and hearing their fear from it, I try not to be scared, but it is a scary feeling. I would hate to be in that position. We've been blessed over here in the U.S. to not really be invaded and infringed upon like the Ukraine has been, but that has been a pretty I don't want to say interesting, because this is people's lives we're talking about, but it's been a lot to watch. And then you scratch the surface, and you as a Black male and as a person of color, you scratch the surface and you watch and you see how, on the flip side, how the Ukraine is treating the people of color over there. And then you're like,
talk about it, man.
It's human lives that we're watching happen, but then, get uprooted and everything. But then, like I said, as a person of color, it's like, how do you feel bad when you look and you see the people that look just like you being treated in a horrible way? Dogs and TV sets are being able to be taken on trains before the other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
What part of the game is that?
Yeah. And I don't know if y'all seen, Mike, did you see there's been a few clips of compilations of like reporters, being in like this utter shock, this is not Africa, this is Europe, and like acting, what they're saying is that this type of unrest or having to leave your home, like that's okay in Africa or the Middle East, but like this shouldn't be happening. Like they're just shocked, and it's been alarming to see that, and this is just show you just the tainted view of people of color that a lot of people of power have of us. So I'm curious. Did you see that, Mike? Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's always been this unspoken or probably written down somewhere that like European nations aren't getting colonized or invaded or war torn, and they're not third world countries, right? Whatever that's supposed to mean. I was arguing with somebody on the internet about third world the other day. Like all of it is rooted in racism and colonialism. Like these countries aren't poor and torn apart because they lack intelligence or resources, but it's because of what Europe has done in America, to be honest. And so Russia doing this at this point in time, and honestly, I think it's just really like Putin, feeling like he's bored or whatever he wants to do, like in his last years or whatever. But it's a terrible thing that's happening to Ukrainians. It's terrible that Africans and people of color getting treated like that, trying to flee. Because like how to be racist at a time like this is crazy to me. Like, but it's also telling that people are how people value white countries and white people more than people of color across the world, And so, like Marcus said, it does put you in a way, makes you feel some type of way because it's like, yeah, I do feel bad, but then I'm also like, well, how y'all treating us, And that's and so that's and I think that's important for us to be able to like have that dialogue with our kids too in class. You know what I'm saying? And it's just because our kids are seeing these things. It's in social media. Like when I was younger, I had very few like pictures of wars and like you heard about it and it was in textbooks. But like now kids can see it live in action. They can see the clips and they can see the reports and everything isn't just coming from ABC or whatever the case may be. So we're much closer to everything now, you know what I mean? And so it is important that like teachers like Marcus are able to like at least break things down for our kids for them to understand what's going on and help ease anxiety or help them understand like the world view and perspective and to understand like why things are the way they are.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm sure if you listen to the experts, this will be going on for a while, so maybe we'll check in with an update on the next episode. But Marcus, I'm glad we have you here because we talked about in the last episode Governor Whitmer making some strides to try to provide some funding relief as a way to help retain educators and recruit and just incentivize educators to stay in the profession. So she's officially unveiled her budget, which includes more than $2 billion for educator incentive programs. So I want to just highlight this last part here for full-time returning teachers and other employees who get a $2,000 bonus this year and next year, then $3,000 in 2024, $4,000 in 2025. Part-time workers will see less, but they'll still get a bonus as well. And I guess this next question is, we kind of talked about her efforts and whether we, felt it was adequate or too late. But I'm curious for you, Marcus, like, do you think this is going to keep some people from leaving? We know that you probably experienced in your school, some people have left the profession, or you may know someone who left. Do you think these bonuses are going to be effective in keeping people from actually leaving?
I think it may make people think about it a little bit longer, but I think a lot of people that are leaving, they would have left anyway, because I think with education, it's so much more than just the money. The money helps. More money does help, but then you think about everything else that comes with it. You think of a lot of times the back and forth of this. Sometimes in some buildings you have administrators versus teachers, and you got to deal with these parents and everything else. So some people say it's not even worth the money. This whole mental health talk has been big the last few years, and I appreciate it being talked about. So I think some people may change their mind, but I think you're going to have a lot of people to say, you know what, I'm done anyway. I appreciate the effort, but I gotta go. I think we'll see that a lot.
No, I agree with you, Marcus. I was just going to say, I think that the bonuses are good, but it's not enough, right? It's the salaries need to be improved because of what teachers mean to this country. Like we're educating the youth. Like we are going to determine the intelligence of the citizens of the future, right? Like what direction we're going. But to your point, I think people who are going to stay, we're going to stay, right? People who are going to leave, we're going to leave. And I think you really hit it on the head when you talk about think about how COVID has affected education, right?
Yeah.
How things were already bad before COVID, and it was just the nail in the coffin. And so people found other jobs paying similar wage, and they kind of just chose their mental health because it's more than just a salary. It's also just, all the other things too, on top of the fact you're not paying us, a lot of money. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Now let me step in here, man, because I feel like, okay, on one hand we say, oh, teachers don't get paid enough, and now I just listen to both of you say, oh, well, they ain't gonna do nothing anyway. So it's like, which way do we want? We want to get closer to getting paid more money. I think it's good. I don't know if it's gonna make a difference, but I tell you one thing I think that's underrated that we should look into. Don't you hate when you get a bonus or some extra money, but then it's taxed, so you don't even see that amount? Now, we know obviously there's federal tax laws, state tax laws. I think they need to look into making bonuses like this be tax free. I know that may seem kind of petty, but I know for me, when I hear that money, I'm like, okay, they're gonna add it to my check, and then you know what I'm saying? It's gonna that 2,000 gonna come down to 1,500 or 13. It's gonna. I'm not even gonna see the full amount, and I think that for me, when I hear bonuses, the number you shine in front of me, I know it's gonna get taxed heavily. Yeah. Or if it ain't taxed, I'm gonna owe it on the back end. You know what I'm saying? when the tax return comes. And I think that's kind of an underrated, I think people overlook that, because that to me, I think kind of kills a little bit of that enthusiasm. It ain't like somebody giving you $2,000 cash and you can go got some extra money. It kind of gets rolled in, you don't really see it. So that's my only kind of critique of it.
Yeah. I think Marvin Gaye said it best: money we make it, before we see it, you take it.
Yeah.
So my follow-up question actually too is, when we talk about this teacher shortage is something that has been happening for quite some time, right? We're not talking about all of a sudden people are leaving, but also there wasn't enough teachers to begin with, to even replace those who are leaving. So is this bonus, or is this plan even addressing the problem at hand, right? Do you feel like this addresses the part where people are not going to school to be teachers as much as they were in the past?
I mean, that's a good point. I can jump in and say it doesn't solve it completely, right? I mean, those are almost like two. So you have a retention issue, you also have a recruitment issue. So I think this one is really trying to get at the retainment of teachers, especially now where it's like, it's like a wound that's bleeding. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a bit of a Band-Aid approach. But to your point, if we don't continue to fill that pipeline, we're going to still. People going to retire. Some people, like you said, it's going to leave anyway because they just, it's not worth the money to them. So I agree that it's kind of one-sided. Marcus, I know you had something you want to add.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of making going into education look more attractive. Because like you said, we got people. The retention is pretty crazy. When I was at Wayne State, I would see people one semester. We would have classes together, and then I would see them second semester. I'm like, hey, where you been? Oh, I'm not in the College of Education anymore. I'm like, we just took 4 classes together. What changed your mind? I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's people getting deep into these classes and realizing maybe how they were in school, and they're like, nah, I'm not dealing with 16-year-old me or 12-year-old me. It's a lot. It's a lot. I tell my kids every day, there's one of me and 172 of you all. I'm responsible for all of you all. And I think when people realize that and think about that, and maybe even think about their experience in school and how teachers are treated and everything else, I think it's hard. It's a hard choice to make. And I think a lot of people do back out and change their mind because simply of that.
Right.
Yeah, I think part of it as well. Mike and I were doing some research just before the show, just on starting teacher salaries and average salaries for people with bachelor degrees. And I think some of these stats were a little interesting. It may speak to why people make that major change in college when they realize, the average starting salary for a teacher with a bachelor's degree is around $40,000 here in the state of Michigan. Right now, the thing is, let's say that's the starting salary. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of break down a few things. If you look at Michigan, the average salary of teachers is around 60,000 if you take all of them. But that's a large percent of those people will have advanced degrees, a master's degree, all kind of professional learning that they
years in,
certifications.
Yeah.
and then when you look at here around the country, the average salary for someone with a bachelor's degree is around 59,000 in the state. So you got to think about it, like our average salary, and if you've just been around teaching, most teachers, it seems like we've been teaching for a number of years, you have like a bachelor's degree or some other advanced degree. You have to do all of that just to get to the 60, when you have some people getting bachelor's degrees starting out with 60. And I think just the change in the economy and some of these jobs, like work from home, you know what I mean, to make some of this money, it does, I think, make teaching look less attractive. And I think that's what you start off with, like, it has to be attractive. So I don't know, like, how do you make that more attractive? Mike, you want to add anything? Like,
yeah, I do think that the starting salary needs to be higher, but I also think there needs to be more incentives, right? Like, I don't think teachers need to be paying for college. If I'm saying I'm going to college to teach for education, that should be free. If I change careers and I'm committed to teaching for a certain number of years, my college loan should be paid off, right? Because you're doing a public service, like teaching in schools, teaching in public schools is a public service. So like that, you shouldn't be using the money that you're making from teaching to pay off loans from schools, right? It's almost like a class issue, right? Where only people from wealthy families can afford to even be a teacher, right? And I also felt like, the teaching profession has been mostly women for so long that the wage gap is probably tied to a lot of, how this country has treated women in equal pay.
Absolutely.
Right? It's only 2% of us brothers in there in the first place. So if most of the teaching force has been women, and this country has been underpaying women for so many years, it kind of makes sense why teaching isn't getting this fair shake, right? And so my next question was going to be around, like, what do we think a good salary would be? Now, I would say that if you told kids coming out of college that, hey, we'll pay for you'll get your loans forgiven, we'll start you at $50,000-$60,000 depending on the city, because obviously you're in New York or LA, like that's not going to be enough. I do think that it will be more attractive, and I think if you have stories, right, and I think pre-pandemic stats, right, and I think if you have because we haven't even talked about inflation. Jesus Christ. If you have stories of brothers like us who do enjoy the profession, right? People hear us speak about it, and I've convinced a few people to go into education because of their passion to do work in the community and their passion for kids, especially Black children.
Hey, Mike done put more people in the profession than government. Hey, listen.
But I'm not, and I'm also not trying to bring brothers into a burning house, right? Yeah. So the profession does need to improve. And we do need to take care of folks because it's a future investment. Mm-hmm. If our kids do well, if you pay, like D. Haynes, our guest from the last show, talked about the school in New York who was paying teachers $100,000, right? Which might not be realistic for everybody, but they had a wait list for people trying to apply to that school, right? Think about the type of professionals you can get with $100,000. Think about the best of the best will come into teaching because I can make $100,000 and I have to keep that job. My job now is competitive. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like if we lose a teacher in the school now, we can't replace them because there's no other teachers now, right? So now you have the subs and long-term subs and things like that. And it's just affecting education as a whole.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think last school year, the school year right after, the pandemic hit, I think Detroit Public Schools Community District did a pretty decent effort to attract more teachers. They raised the starting salary from $38,900 to $51,017. And last year, was when I actually took my position. I walked right into that. That was man. Listen, I'm sitting here doing math. Just figuring like, okay, if I'm making $38,900 a year, this is XYZ every 2 weeks, and then I see this news article that raises it to $51,000. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it helped, but even still, you factor in everything else that comes with it. It helps, but it's not the be all end all as far as the solution at all.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, Marcus, before we move on to the next segment of the show, on just like how teachers should be compensated. Now, I don't know if I seen news like 2 weeks ago, Chrysler auto workers getting like $14,000 bonuses. There's a lot of jokes on that, and that's great.
Yeah.
And there's been some debate around how teachers should be compensated. So I think in most school systems, you see either like a step system where it's like, based off of your years and also your education level determines your salary. And then there's some that's more performance based where you may get some kind of bonus, or maybe where you're negotiating what you're compensated and what your salary is. How do you think teachers should be compensated? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think it should be based off of, in my opinion, your the reviews you get. When you are observed and you reach that highly effective mark so many times, why not compensate for that? If you maybe I don't know, it could be a system to where you have, in addition to that, maybe student and parent reviews. That would bring the parents into the school more to pay more attention. That would give the students some form of ownership in the schools. Just to I don't know, just to for them to realize, like, yo, this is your education. How is this person helping you out? How do you feel like this person is preparing you for, the rest of your life? That may help a little bit. Just to encourage teachers to actually do their absolute best, because you got a lot of teachers that get burned out by November. They're like, man, you know what? I'm going to put this YouTube video up, and you all take some notes off of that, and that's just what it is.
Right.
I'm sure we've all been there from time to time, but you got teachers that simply lean on that because they're tired. So I think if you find a way to, I don't know, make a I don't know, like a survey or review or something like that, just to encourage, I think that may help.
And I agree with you. I do think we need to start teachers higher up. I do think that there should be bonuses and incentives for performances. And I love the idea of parents and students, like, like their thoughts, because the students are technically, to me, the client. Like, their success, their happiness. Like, we have, like, school is not a happy place, right? Let's be real. Like, for a lot of kids, it's not a happy place.
That's true.
And so then why would I want to work here when I'm an adult if I don't enjoy it when I'm a kid?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't made the school the place to be where people have to be for 12 years of their life, at least 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to change too,
Yeah.
especially for our kids, right? If we want to have an equal representation, if you want people, because a lot of times, and I'm gonna be honest with you, you got people coming from 2 counties over to come teach in Detroit. Their temper is this, their patience is this quick with our babies, and then they're out of there. Or they give up, and they're not giving the same energy they would give in their own community, right? I'm talking about it. They're not giving them the same energy they would give in their own community. So they putting the video on, or they microaggression on our babies, or they failing our babies, and they getting a check and they going home, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't the same type of love and passion, maybe because they don't, connect with the kids in the same way. But the kids are the center of what we're doing, so they need to have more of a voice in how things go, and the performance of their teachers.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Marcus, we appreciate you joining us, man.
Thank you.
I mean, I had some other thoughts on it too, but we can talk about this all around. But we definitely have to bring you back, man. You come on the show twice, you become official friend of the show. So
appreciate it.
Let me know when you had the time. But definitely want to say keep up the great work, man. We appreciate what you're doing over at CAS. Appreciate you being one of the ECTF fellows, tapping in with Bmea, and we look forward to hearing from you, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for bringing me in, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Take care, man.
All right, thank you.
And I know we have Christian Young over. He's been very active on the comments. We appreciate you. and we will, looking to get you on a future show. Can't do it tonight, Christian, but we have a question from the audience. So, Mike, what's the ECTF? We didn't really even talk about it today.
Yeah, I mean,
let us know what the ECTF is.
If you watch previous shows, we've had some guests come on, Marcus Summerall, Jonathan Galloway. Like, Early Career Teacher Fellowship is one of our fellowships that is focused strictly on new teachers, right? Getting them prepared for the classroom, but also immersing them in our framework, which is about liberating learners. So we're teaching these new teachers how to build a relationship with their kids, how to push academic rigor, like what restorative practices are, and just understanding what cultural awareness is, and so that they can be the type of teacher that Bmea wants in front of our students. So it's a monthly professional development for teachers outside of school. We offer, it's a paid fellowship as well. So it's just really good experience. And what happens is a lot of teachers end up being way more prepared for the, trials and tribulations of education, but also just being a better, more culturally responsive educator for their students.
Excellent. Appreciate that. So, we'll definitely let the people know when the next round is starting. Applications opening up for people who want to get going. Mike, why don't you go ahead and intro our next two guests?
So we've been talking about teacher compensation and trying to get more people in education. This next organization called Teach Plus is new to Michigan, and they are doing the work as well. And so what we have is the Michigan State Director for Teach Plus, Ben Locke, and we have one of their fellows who's been in the program, their teacher leadership fellowship, and is currently actually teaching at Cass Tech as well, and that's Kelsey. We want to welcome them both to the show. How you doing, Ben?
Great. How are you?
Thank you for joining us.
Kelsey, how you doing?
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right, cool.
So, Ben, can you tell us really quickly a little bit more about Teach Plus and what do you guys do in your mission?
Yeah, sure. So Teach Plus is really about teacher leadership. So I like to say, when it comes to educational policy and practice, teacher leadership isn't just like a nice to have, it's a must have. So we really work to empower excellent and diverse groups of teachers to take leadership over issues of policy and practice that affect their classrooms and their students. All with the aim of really making more equitable classrooms and setting up more equitable systems for our kids.
Nice. So really just improving the teacher workforce.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that we are currently running this fellowship, this policy fellowship that Kelsey's a part of, the Michigan Teacher Leadership Collaborative, or the MTLC as we call it. And the different groups are focused on different topics, similar to what you were talking about with Marcus in your last guest. Yeah, Cass Tech is representing pretty hard today. So we have these teacher leaders, be able to stay in the classroom, but really kind of affect the bigger system in a lot of different ways, whether that's addressing, SEL and student mental health in a group that Kelsey's in, or trying to affect school funding to make it more equitable, or dealing with the transition to post-secondary college and career. So different areas like that these fellows are working on.
That's excellent. Kelsey, so can you tell us a little bit about your experience being with Teach Plus, and just what are you focused on, and what have you been involved in with?
For sure. So actually, I had never heard of Teach Plus until a colleague sent me a text and was like, "Hey, you're really passionate about politics. You should check this out." I was like, "Okay," which is true. Like, I've always tried to be as aware of that as I could, and just see where can I push the envelope a little bit more in the work that I do as a teacher. And so the small working group that I'm in focuses on SEL and mental health. And obviously, this pandemic has exacerbated all of our mental health, but our students are really struggling. We do not have the mental health support to actually help our kids effectively. And too often, teachers are just told, have a mental health day. And we're like, okay, but what does that mean? Or do we just talk about our feelings? We are not licensed therapists. I'm empathetic, but there is only so far I can go because I'm not a licensed psychologist. And so my group is trying to advocate for a bill that we're trying to really push in our House Education Committee. What is my brain? And this bill would really help us get state standards that would create curriculum for teachers where we would have trainings, we'd be able to talk about this effectively with our students. And so currently we are just trying to do as many op-eds as possible, trying to talk to as many legislators as possible. So it really is about teachers having the opportunity to be more civically engaged than we normally are. Like most people aren't involved in politics. Like we are just like, okay, I'll vote for whatever aligns with my values. Maybe you don't even vote at all. But as a teacher, I'm seeing the waves of public education being torn apart. And I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I don't want to have to see it totally crumble. Like I'm in my 4th year of teaching. I can't imagine doing anything else. I don't want to see it just fall apart. Like I want to be able to fight for education.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. Having teachers at the table to make these decisions and to pass laws and bills that will make the profession make more sense. Like what you're talking about is absolutely great. And I think what's often forgotten, especially in the education piece, is the policy work that's necessary in order for us to improve. And it has to change as the years go on. Like teaching has to evolve, just like our country does, just like society does. So it's really great that you're doing that work. Now, what we want to do, Ben and Kelsey, we want to ask you guys the same question we talked to Marcus about around like teacher compensation, right? So, you listened earlier, there obviously is a shortage. We're trying to do more, Governor Whitner is passing this bill to kind of give bonuses. So we want to kind of get your thoughts. Do you feel like this, is this bonus going to help with retention? Like, what are your thoughts so far?
So as a Michigander, I'm going to have to use like a pothole metaphor because I feel like that's just what we do. But It's a Band-Aid over a pothole because, I can't wait to have a $2,000 bonus, but that doesn't fix the problem. That just says, okay, hope you stay longer, but that's not addressing the actual issue. Like we're looking at public education being gutted across the state. That's like, okay, I get $2,000 in the fall, but how is that going to change any of the policies that are impacting like our attendance? What are like all the qualifications for teachers? Like it does not fix the system. And what we need to do is like really refurbish the system that we have. Either we dismantle it or build a new, or we actually try to like patch up these holes. And so the bonuses are nice, but it's not going to bring in new teachers. We do not have like the way that the teaching profession looks right now does not feel incentivizing like at all. Like I remember my program at Michigan State, there was, I think maybe like 60 people in like my cohort, like, which is, no, that's not true. There's no way there were 60 people. I don't know the numbers. That's why I teach English, but I could see the numbers dwindling from after my class and then knowing student teachers in the following programs that the numbers were getting smaller. So there are less people wanting to go into this because they don't see it as a great profession, right? They might say, oh, well, you're so passionate, but most teachers are going to leave within the first 5 years. And how is that retaining anybody like that? Those are really stark statistics. So I think there just has to be a whole systemic cleanse, if you will, because it really is dire. And I don't know what public education is going to look like in the next 3 years, 5 years, but I still want to stay here because I love what I do. I love my kids, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, and Kelsey, I do have a point to that, but I want to go to Ben first. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, in terms of the bonuses, like Kelsey and Marcus and everybody was saying, I'm sure it's very much appreciated. But I think, like Kelsey mentioned, that the issues are bigger. I heard a colleague of mine once say that a good recruitment plan is a good retention plan, and vice versa. So, really thinking about what are the conditions that teachers are teaching and really what are their opportunities. Like I said before, Teach Plus is all about teacher leadership. So often, teachers are like, well, I could, be the teacher forever. I could, I guess, go into admin, but maybe I don't really want to do that. Is there something else where there's third way, this other path or something that I can take, and maybe some compensation kind of tied to that too for those extra duties that they might be able to take on. So I think kind of thinking creatively about kind of just the whole system and what could be done there is really important. And the other thing about that is one of the kind of working groups that is a part of this MTLC right now, they are working on basically looking at grow your own programs. And there's a House Bill 5107 that would create kind of a teacher cadet model for the state so that it could be a way to kind of get high school kids interested in becoming teachers and helping them through that process and giving them incentives to get through that process and eventually become a teacher. So I think, that is just kind of one piece of this really big puzzle. But that's one of the other things that we've helped members of the MTLC with, like within kind of the confines of this fellowship, it's hard to quote unquote, fix education in the 11 months we have together, between the 5 of us. So they went through a process of narrowing down, saying like, the teacher shortage is a huge issue. What do we want to tackle there? And they went with, looking at grow your own programs and things related to that, particularly because that affects teacher diversity too. So there's just, a lot of pieces of that puzzle.
Yeah, I like that model as a, something to explore, because I think when you empower young people from a young age to start looking at education, they can start to, say, oh, I have the potential to change some of the things that I think need to be changed. And, they can be, I know for me, like I wanted to be in education largely because of one teacher that I had a strong connection with. So for me, I thought like, you know what, I can be like he is to me to someone else. And I think that if we start these models earlier, we can, hopefully empower our young people to see that this is viable for them and that they can go to, definitely have an impact if they decide to go into education. So that's cool work that y'all got going on.
Definitely. And I think what a lot of people outside of education don't realize is that if, to Kelsey's point, if public schools crumble in the sense that like they're no longer viable and they're almost there, like viable for us to send our students there, now people have to start paying for private school. And that's not in a lot of people's budget, right? That's not something that people like. We pay insurance, we pay our mortgage, but it's like there's a, that's a certain class to be in. It's like, I'm gonna send my kid to a private school. And there are so many other things that go along with having to send your kid to a private school or having all schools become private. But to the point earlier, we do have to, I think the recruiting piece is a retention piece, right? And I do think like teachers know what will make our own workplace better. And so the voices have to be there, right? And so it's just, it wasn't planned, but I think one question I have is like, if you had one bill that you said, you write this bill, we promise we'll pass it to make education better. I'm gonna start with you, Kelsey, so think about it. One bill that we promise we'll pass it, but it's the one bill that's going to change everything for us. What would that bill be?
That's really tough. There's so many things. I know. Oh gosh. Ooh. Okay. Well, oh golly. I honestly have no idea because I'm thinking of like this current wave of, anti-CRT bills where we're like, what is this doing to our like actual education? Actually, I'd probably say the one thing that we could really do to like make an impact is to remove the property tax, that like the way that we have property tax value attached to our school budgets. No, like that is unacceptable because working in Detroit public schools, I understand, like I grew up in Plymouth Canton, which was, a suburb, but pretty affluent. I can see the difference between the way my high school was funded versus, even though I teach at Cass Tech, I'm still a part of Detroit public schools. So probably rework the tax code where property value is tied to your schooling. And it's just, that's unacceptable. That's the only thing I can think of because I'm like, there's so many other things. I can definitely cement on that one.
And Kelsey, now they do say real estate is the backbone of a lot of systemic racism. So you really hit a nail on the head. That's, hey, I wasn't expecting that.
Well, here's the thing too. I was going to say this to the last point was that when we say, and I'm gonna get to your thought, Ben. We got another question in the chat from Christian too. We may try to get to, but when people say like education is getting worse now, some of these conditions have existed. All right, there's been overpopulated classrooms in Detroit and other cities, for a long time. Like 40 kids in a class is not shocking at all. That's like normal. Lack of resources. So I wonder, is it that if we see some of these like teacher shortage issues start to affect the schools in the suburbs, is that when this is going to really blow? Is that, and I don't know because I'm not out. I work in the city, so I can't speak on. I'm not but I'm just wondering because I'm like some of these things have been going on for a long time, and ho humming along like normal. We've been having to make do for years. And I feel like now there's an increased, urgency around it. But like, I haven't seen this for the last 10 plus years of my career. So it's like, I don't know. It's just something to think about. And like what you just mentioned, as far as the tax code and how that affects school funding, that's been in place a long time too, as we know. So Ben, you can go ahead and let us know, what would your bill be? What would you do?
It's a rough question, Mike. Plus the answer is pretty similar to Kelsey's. I mean, if there is some way to make school funding more equitable, I say that because that undergirds so much else, so many other things, so many other programs. So if you really want strong mental health in schools, well, you got to pay for it. If you really want excellent, curriculum that the students can connect with, you got to pay for it. So I mean, that really affects everything. So Michigan is in the bottom 5 states when it comes to equitable funding and how schools are funded in this state. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and there are already different groups, different coalitions that are involved in this. Like even for this particular MTLC, Michigan Leadership Collaborative, that we're running, we're partnering with the Education Trust Midwest on that. So I know they are involved, in different efforts relating to school funding. One of the working groups actually in this current cohort is taking a look at getting rid of a kind of a boilerplate piece of the budget legislation that says, there ought to be 11.5% more money going to low income students. But whenever there's a budget shortfall, that's the first thing that gets cut. So it's kind of like, we really need to take that out. And that's just a starting point, right? I mean, that's like a little thing we could do. You literally have to like cross out a couple lines in the budget and like you fix that problem. But if we're talking like wave the magic wand territory, you could do a whole lot more in terms of equitable funding and making sure that English learners and students in special education and low income students and all sorts of different students that basically more resources are required to teach them, that making sure that more resources get sent to them.
Hey, I love it. And I would answer my own question, but I don't have the answer. So I love you guys. You guys do the work. And please, Ben, tell the people where they can find, like, how do I apply? How do I get to know more about Teach Plus? Like, tell us where we can, where people can go to learn more.
Right. Yeah. So we are actually, right now, applications are open for the next cohort for this fellowship that we're running. There is a stipend involved, and it runs for about 11 months. If you're interested, definitely apply. And that's at teachplus.org/MI for Michigan. There it is. So if you go to that page, that'll take you to the Michigan specific Teach Plus page. And right at the top there, you'll see like an apply now little icon there, and you can apply now and keep scrolling down the page for more information, including taking a look at Kelsey's profile and the profiles of the current members, and you just get all sorts of other information there too.
And if you apply, say that I referred you, because they're going to give me some referral bonuses. Just kidding.
Well, there is, I don't know about a referral bonus, but there is like a little like nominate someone thing that you can do, a little thing you can fill out. So take a look on that same website for that. Like if you know someone, you definitely nominate them, or if you're a teacher, apply yourself.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Kelsey. We appreciate you, Ben. It's been a great time having you. And hopefully we'll see you guys again, be friends of the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Anytime you want me to talk about education and politics, please let me know.
We'll take you up on that offer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right. Now, Mike, I do want to just ask you one more question, that came from Christian Young. And he said, what do you feel about that bill? I think we talked about this a little bit last week. Potentially putting college education majors as teacher, paying them as teachers, right? If you put the provision for strong mentorship, then it's like they're getting paid as student teachers. He said he's all for that. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not against it. I think that like we really do have to think outside the box in terms of like what does it mean to be a teacher? What is it required to be a teacher? We do want the best of the best, but I think that teaching is one of those things where you do need to learn. You do learn on the job. You get better as you grow. Oftentimes, teachers quit before they get to the year where they probably get to their best self. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a quarterback. If you can get on a team and sit behind a Hall of Famer, that's probably your best bet instead of having to come right in, first year in and have to learn on the job and try to carry a franchise. So I'm all for it. I believe that, I wholeheartedly believe in student resident teaching one. I also believe that there can be a gradual release into letting college students be teachers with, like he said, strong mentorship and supervision and support. But absolutely, and I think younger teachers probably would connect with a lot of the kids. So man, so I don't have a problem with that at all.
And I did a year of student teaching. I went to Michigan State as well, Kelsey. So go green. But for me, I did that 5th year student teaching. It wasn't paid, and I actually had to pay for it. You understand what I'm saying? And I had a great mentor teacher. I was teaching. I definitely, it was a valuable experience to learn under her, to get that experience. But it was just like, I went further into debt. You know what I'm saying? To, just to get that experience. And I think that's something that we need to look into changing, right? You look at, in the 5th year of college, essentially, because those credits cost the same, even though I was spending most of my time in a classroom, right? So I think that's definitely something systemically that could be changed and flip it completely, where it's like, you're not paying for it to attend, but now you're getting paid to do it. Because I was doing some of the same work. I was taking over classrooms of certified, teachers who weren't doing so good. They were like, okay, can you cover for this teacher? And I just love teaching. So, but looking back on it, I'm like, I should have been getting paid for that.
Absolutely, you should have been. And I had a similar situation. My teacher program that I joined had us teach for free for a year, but you're a grown adult. You had to pay for where you're living. You had to pay for your expenses. So we end up having to take out loans to basically live. So I further into debt. And like you said, they should have paid me to do the student teaching, right? We pay substitutes when the teachers aren't there, and a lot of schools have long-term substitutes who have done no educational classes. You know what I mean? So what's the difference?
And then I want to bring this back up. This came from Fairfield, Maryland. The fact that my government wants more for my student loans than my mortgage is a huge problem, which is super interesting, right? The interest rates on student loans oftentimes higher than the interest rate you're going to get on the FHA loan or the government-backed loan.
18-year-old can take out $100,000 in student loans, but I can't get a business.
You can't get that for a business. You can't. All right. We're about to have a whole nother podcast, Mike.
We can talk about the finances.
We're supposed to be wrapping up, man. What you doing?
This is what happens when we don't have Jerry and Brandon, man. They can't hold us.
Right. All right, Mike. Tell us what we got going on before we close out.
All right, March 14th. 11:45 during the day, we're going to be doing our live podcast from the Michigan Reading Association Conference 2022. It's going to be a great show, so you'll see more flyers, get more information about our special guests. But that's our next podcast, March 14th on that Monday. That'll be our next show, talking about literacy and equity justice. It's going to be a great show.
I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be an experience, and we're going to definitely bring some hot content to get you through and also just inform you. So, Mike, have anything else before we wrap up?
Happy Women's History Month.
Looking forward to celebrating that this month, that we do every year.
Yes, sir. And celebrate women every day. And, blessings to you and yours, man. See you next time.
All right, we out of here.
You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.